Hi, I'm Glenn Tinley with ITVWinnipeg.com, and I am here for the April update with our Mayor Sam Katz at the City of Winnipeg. Thank you again for coming. Happy spring.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
And congratulations. Last we spoke, you were heading off to get wed. You are now back.
I am happily married right now, and yes, Lee and I got married, and we had a little 5-day trip to Costa Rica, and now back to reality in lovely downtown Winnipeg.
Yes, with waters rising and things like that going on.
There's lots going on, but so far things are okay.
Yeah, no, it's. I've been watching the river levels closely, and so far so good. And
I've been walking the banks closely. So.
yeah, well, and I'll say we've been contacted by different levels within the city because our building is right on the river, and I will say they're very much on top of things. So kudos to them.
Things are looking a little better than we thought, and I must confess that everybody within the city has done a phenomenal job, every department. As you can appreciate, when your home or your building is at risk, that can be a rather traumatic or shall we say stressful situation. So I'm glad to see that all the departments are doing a great job, and I'd also, with your blessings of course, a big thank you to all the volunteers who've come out to help sandbag, especially the students during the week. I don't know where we'd be without them, but thank you.
Oh, I can imagine that would just be a mountain of a job.
It sure is.
Yeah. As a lead into this, yesterday, which is Sunday, the 17th of April, I think, we launched our brand new show, The Peg This Week. Brand new show on Shaw, and it's going to be also on ITV Winnipeg.
Congratulations.
Thank you. We hope that you will at some point be a guest on our panel. It's talk about current affairs, what's happening in the city, kind of like this, but every week. And
only if I'm invited.
With a panel, you will be invited. One of the topics we spoke about yesterday, and we had Dave Angus and Barry Rempel and Paula Havixbeck speaking about Canadian Museum for Human Rights and what it means to the city and all the things. And one of the things actually that Dave Angus said is, kudos to our city for sort of standing up and sort of taking on the challenge to bring something like this to bear. And then recently there was some reports taxes in lieu of with the Human Rights Museum. So I just want you to explain a little bit about it because I get a little bit confused. And the issue is this something the city's missing out on some revenues? Is that could be used elsewhere? Just put everybody's mind at ease in terms of what it is and how these things work.
Well, I may not be able to put everybody's mind at ease, but at least I can put the facts on the table, and I'm happy to do that.
Let's do that.
So first of all, let's just try and clarify something. This is not Glenn's museum. This is not Sam's museum.
Correct.
This is not the Asper's museum. This is the Museum for Human Rights, which is basically a federal museum, the first of its kind outside of Ottawa. It's not in Vancouver. It's not in Toronto. It's not in Montreal. It's not in Calgary or Edmonton. It's in Winnipeg. And we should be extremely proud of that because if it wasn't here, it would have been out east.
Somewhere else.
That's a fact. That's number one. Number two, a significant amount of money has been committed by all three levels of government, the federal government, the provincial government, and the city of Winnipeg. The private sector, I believe, has raised approximately close to $150 million, probably the most you've ever seen for any project in this. It is the most you've ever seen for any project in this city that I'm aware of.
Well, private, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Guaranteed.
So here's the scenario. It appears projects taking a little longer. They are over budget, okay? And they have gone to all three levels of government and asked for additional contribution. I believe the city of Winnipeg was asked for $3.63 million, which would be our proportionate share. And that will be going to EPC this week. Now, what happens, because this is a federal museum, when we assess property taxes, it doesn't work the same way if it was a private sector building. Well, it's called PILT, Payment in Lieu of Taxes.
Okay.
So what the federal government does, they pay City of Winnipeg a payment in lieu of taxes.
Okay.
It could be the equivalent of the assessment. It could be less. Okay, it's just a matter of sitting down and working something out. Now, what we've done the provincial government actually put up about $12 million of the city's contribution, cash contribution towards this project, which we've agreed to repay the province out of PILT. So let's just assume our payment in lieu of taxes from the federal government is annually, let's call it $1 million.
Okay.
It would take us about 12 years, and we'd have repaid the provincial government.
Correct.
Now, what the Museum for Human Rights is asking, if we could extend that for an additional 3 years, which in years 13, 14, 15 would give them $1 million. In the meantime, they will somehow make arrangements to have the money up front, and they will use these monies to pay it back over a period of time. That's the request that has come to us. And here's what you have to keep in mind. If they did not build the Museum of Human Rights, we would not be receiving a nickel.
Right.
No different than the new football stadium we're
Yeah.
looking at. The money is coming from an area where we were getting zero before.
Right.
So it's a very similar situation.
So I guess then it's a deferral, if I, but again, I'll go back to, if the ground was sitting empty, there would be no taxes. Now that this is on it, at some point, so there's a deferral gonna happen over when there's actual funds may come to the city. But as the museum gets operational, and as things start to progress, and it's running on a day-to-day basis, there will be benefit to the city, over and above everything else, but just tax revenue.
You're 100% correct. The facts are this, is that for the first 11 to 12 years, we won't be getting anything because whatever comes in will go to the province. Then if this request was approved by council, you could add another 3 years. So there's basically about 14, give or take a little bit, 14 years. Then we would start receiving that money and it would come to the city. And so in reality, you are giving them money, okay? But the facts are, if they didn't build it, you wouldn't have this money anyways, because it'd be sitting, God knows what it'd be at this stage of the game. It's been vacant for a long time. So
Right.
that's the scenario. So you can argue one way or the other, but I think what you really have to appreciate is, do you believe that the Museum for Human Rights would have a positive impact on our city? I believe it'll have a positive impact on Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada, and the rest of the world. I truly believe it will create significant economic impact through tourism, people coming to our city, and I think we should be very proud to have the Museum for Human Rights here in Winnipeg as opposed to Toronto or Ottawa. And that's what people have to understand. The money, the taxpayers' money that went into this from the federal government,
Yeah.
it was going to be spent regardless. It's only a matter of whether it went to Toronto or Ottawa.
Right.
So that money was going to be spent no matter what. And it wasn't going to be spent on things that we might have requested. It was going towards a museum.
Yeah, okay. So, and then add to that all of the fact that, because people talk about, well, you brought up tourism. And again, yesterday, Dave Angus brought up the fact that we've got this great 1-2 punch with the zoo and the polar bear exhibit and everything going on there, the Human Rights Museum, other stuff going on. I'll throw it out there, but talk of the NHL return, we brought it up before, if it were to come to fruition. All of a sudden, and we've talked about this before, Winnipeg maybe starts to get a little bit bigger on the map of recognition else around on those tour operators in Hong Kong and China, and where a lot of tour operations are coming from in Europe, as well as from across Canada and the U.S.
There's no question when you broaden the spectrum of special events or special types of facilities or amenities to come see, we've become much more attractive. And there's a lot of those things happening right now in our city. And those are the kind of things you want to happen to make Winnipeg a great place to live, work, and play, to encourage people from other parts of Canada or United States to move here and to get tourism to come here. I can tell you, I went to the annual meeting of Economic Development Winnipeg, okay? And they were saying what a positive impact this is going to have, and they actually have, a dollar number established with it. I think it was close to, $80 million plus a year. It's significant.
Yeah.
Now, keep in mind, these are projections, but this is what happens when you build these types of facilities. And you know what? I know there are people who do not like the idea.
Oh,
That's reality. I understand that.
there's people that don't like the idea of an NHL return. There's the people that don't like the idea of having the zoo, having a zoo at all. I mean, but if all we do is put everything into one box, without opening up all the boxes and saying, gee, what's here in the entire package, then yeah, you can nitpick on each individual thing. And of course, everything needs to be brought to the forefront and we need to be out there. But the reality is, these things are making Winnipeg better, and there's costs associated with them. And we take your word and the Premier's word and our federal representatives' words that, look, this is making Winnipeg better. And that's all there is to it. And if we don't do these things, the dollars go elsewhere. And then what are we going to do with that piece of land? Because then maybe the nitpicking is, gee, you got a piece of property at the Forks and it's sitting empty and we're not doing anything with it and we're not getting any tax dollars from it. And hey, Mr. Mayor, what are you going to do about that?
Yeah, what I've learned, regardless of what type of project it might be, what type of amenity or what type of event it might be, there are always people who will not like the idea for whatever the reason, and they may have valid reasons. Those are their reasons, and they just don't want it to happen. And I think you would agree with me that if all we did is maintained the status quo, and we did that the past 20 years, the next 20 years, you may as well say last person now just flip the light.
Yeah.
Okay? Because you have, it's called progress, and that's what we want is progress. And keep something in mind. We also want to attract businesses to come here. We want businesses to expand. And if you're going to do that, you also need to make sure that you've got the pool of labor, and that helps people stay in Winnipeg. That's what it's all about. So from my point of view, yes, I believe this is a good thing, and I need people to understand it was going to happen. It's just a matter of where. And this is the largest private sector investment I have seen in any project that I can recall in a long, long time.
Yeah. Well, and it's like you say, it's progress, and you can always look back or look ahead and say, well, why are we spending money doing this, that, and the other thing? But you have to sort of do what is put in front of you at the time and make a decision and move forward, right?
You can ask, why do we invest money in the arts? I mean, why do we build a football stadium? You can ask just about any of those questions are out there every day. Every time we make a decision, why do we spend money on the zoo with Assiniboine Park Conservancy? Because that's what's going to make our city different, special, great. That's what it's all about.
Yeah. Well, I know we have to wrap up because you have...
I have work to do.
You have work to do, and I know you have a gentleman coming in to see you who just happened to win a world championship.
Team Stelton, absolutely. Looking forward to that.
So that'd be a nice...
Are you going to stick around and say hello to Jeff and his
I
team?
am definitely going to do that.
Okay.
So I will do that. So thank you very much.
My pleasure.
For seeing us once again. I am Glenn Tinley with ITVWinnipeg.com, signing off for the April 2011 report from City Hall with our Mayor Sam Cates.